Welcome to the Short Funk Podcast. I'm Tom Barbalet. One of the problems that I still encounter in the US is people that don't understand me. And it's one of these funny topics. I thought, how do I even put this out to a Short Funk listening audience? Because ultimately it is an acoustic kind of humor. But I thought, how can I actually work this thing out? And one of the most profound ways that this occurs is when I have to spell my name. Now, you may think, oh, Barbalet. Barbalet is hard to spell, Bravo, Alpha Romeo, Bravo, Alpha, Lima, Echo, Tango. I do it in military speak all the time. No, I'm actually talking about my first name, Tom. The number of times that I have to spell out my first name when I say it to people in this country is extraordinary. And more than it just being like a regular kind of extraordinary, I find it really, my perspective is that general folk that you would meet, like for example, when you go out to a restaurant, this most recently occurred at a Chili's. When you go out to a restaurant, you will encounter people who typically maybe muddled through high school, maybe did some college. They could be PhD holders in fields like philosophy or physics or, a variety of academic fields that may not yield them jobs in the real world. But let's move on from that. Let's talk more about the circumstances where I have to spell my first name. Now, my wife does this better than anyone because she actually explains how I mispronounce my name to Americans. And this was particularly curious in the Chili's because, as you do, I said, two for Tom. And the guy said, what's your name? And I said, Tom. And he said, Tom? And I said, Tom. And he said, Tom? And I said, Tom. And he said, Tom? And I said, T-O-M. Tom. And through that experience, I've done this a few times, not with the recorder going, but I've done this a few times to try and point out how ridiculous this thing is. And my wife does it better than anyone. I can't do it the justice that my wife does it. And the beauty as well is when my wife does it, she makes it sound even more perverse, at least to my ears. Having had this conversation with her after the fact, having heard her impersonate me, and I don't even know what you call him, like the guy who gets people seated at tables and Chili's, it just seemed all the more ridiculous. But I just need to find myself comfortable with the occasional problematic circumstance where I have to spell out T-O-M. And I have to live with it. That's my life. That's the life that I've chosen, is a circumstance where I will have to occasionally spell out my first name. Tom Barbalet, that's T-O-M, Barbalet, in San Jose, signing out.